Hey mamas, and welcome to the Entering Motherhood podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Marie Bilger, a wife, mom of two, VBAC mama, and doula. Join us every episode to learn from professionals, special guests, and moms just like you, ensuring that you know what you need to know and discover things that you didn't know before. I believe in you. Let's doula this, and let's navigate the transition of entering motherhood together. In this episode, I chat with Lindsay Taylor, who is the founder of the Food Doula and the author of 2 cookbooks on pregnancy and postpartum nutrition, one of which is coming out really soon. Lindsay shares her practical tips for making nourishment realistic and manageable. We debunk common myths around postpartum food and emphasize the importance of easy, one-handed, savory snacks and specifically prepping versatile proteins for postpartum. This conversation covers meal trains, simple meal prep strategies, and the value of healthy fats and hydration. It is all aimed towards supporting the mother's healing and energy well beyond the first few weeks after birth. If you are approaching that postpartum period and looking to gain more knowledge on postpartum nutrition, this episode is for you. So with that, let's get this episode started. Hello and welcome to Entering Motherhood. I'm so excited to have you here and get this conversation started. But before we do, how about you go ahead and introduce yourself for the listeners?
Of course, and thanks for having me, Sarah. I love coming here and chatting with you. So my name is Lindsay Taylor, and my business is called the Food Doula. So basically, I am obsessed with figuring out how we make nourishing our bodies for pregnancy and postpartum feel more realistic and not like something that's really hard that we have to suffer with and struggle with, because we know that only makes it harder for us to feel good and energized during a time in our life when we really want to feel at our best. So to do that, I talk a lot on Instagram about food and nutrition. I have written 2 cookbooks. One's called the Food Doula Cookbook, mostly about pregnancy and the 4th trimester. And then my second cookbook that's about to come out called The Nourish Mother, which is all about nourishing your body for its real needs in the postpartum season, and not just for the first month or 2. I'm talking the early years of motherhood. And then the other thing that I do is I train perinatal serving professionals like doulas and nutritionists and midwives who want to integrate nutrition work for the practical real life experience of pregnancy and postpartum. So I absolutely love doing that, which you know because you've done it as well, and building this community of all of us who know how important nutrition is and how sometimes the tips that we hear don't resonate and feel like they don't work for our real life. So there's lots of us now focused on how do we help our clients get nourished for their real lived experience.
Yeah. And I think that's what's really cool about, like the work that you do and like, reels on Instagram to like your course and everything. It really is like, how can we make this easy? Because a lot of the times it is kind of like this like convoluted space of, you have to get like all of this stuff and this and it's like, okay, it doesn't have to be that complicated. And we can really make it more simplistic, not only for our clients, but then like for ourselves too. And it's something that we do every day. We all eat. We all need to eat, but really taking the guesswork out of it and having simple meals prepped and planned and easily accessible can go such a long way, because, this is my 3rd time going through pregnancy, and it's one of those things that you just like don't want to have to think about. But like I said, you do it every single day. And then going into postpartum, I love that, you're not just focusing on that 4th trimester, but it is the years after birth. Like it takes our body a while to really acclimate and heal. And we're raising babies and toddlers and really transitioning through this whole stage. And so it's so important to really, highlight that and say it's not just this, first week postpartum. It really is, bleeding into those like first few years.
Exactly. You said it so beautifully, and that's exactly it. We don't want it to add to the stress and the overwhelm that can sometimes exist when, like you said, you're about to have a new baby coming soon, and we want our food to be something we don't have to think about, that we don't have to maybe shop as much and make our grocery list and then prep food and wash 50 million dishes and cook it. Like, we need to simplify, to your point, so that nourishment feels easy and doable, and it's just contributing so positively to our physical health, mental health, and just the running of our family, right? If there's other kids involved like you have at home, we want everybody to benefit.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we are in that stage of like, let's say we're, preparing for postpartum and we're getting meals together and things like that, what might be some common like misconceptions about the type of food that we should be nourishing ourselves with that you have found is kind of like the complete opposite?
Yeah, that's such a great question because we take in all of the messages that we hear and we feel that there's a lot of shoulds. I should do this, I should do that. And I think one of the shoulds that we need to have a conversation about it is that you should really just prep like soups and stews for your postpartum, right? That's what we hear, and I'm not knocking that. We absolutely should. It's great for our body, good for our digestion. But what I have seen happen with clients is they'll prep all of their beautiful soups and stews and bone broths. But then when baby arrives, they're like, oh, what am I going to eat now? Like in the middle of the night or for breakfast or when there's no other adult around and I can't use a spoon and hold a bowl and I'm have a baby on my chest. And those soups and stews come in handy great for dinner or something like that. But I think one of the misconceptions is that we really need to broaden that and we need to think realistically. What are we going to have next to our bedside when we're lying in bed nursing all night long? Like, what are those snacks that we can eat with one hand? What are those real meals, maybe savory meals that don't require a plate, a fork, a knife, a spoon? So just expanding what we prep, because prepping is one of the best things that we could ever do in terms of being ready with food and nourishment, but sort of broadening what we prep in advance.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite suggestions for those bedside snacks?
Yeah. So I'm a really big fan of one-handed snacks and both sweet and savory. So I think something that happens when we talk about one-handed snacks is we do a lot of the sweet things, which is like the energy balls and the muffins and the oat bars and the lactation cookies. And I love those things because they can stay out of the fridge by your bedside. You can nibble on them. You can get great oats and flax and eggs and all those beautiful things. But what I'm trying to do, especially with this next book, is open that up to also savory one-handed snacks because the nutrients our body needs most that we're missing during postpartum, things like our protein and different types of fat, iron, B12, vitamin A, our choline, we're going to get those from things like beef and chicken and eggs and maybe even some organ meats. So I love things that can do double duty. So for instance, I like meatballs or like protein balls of any type because something like that you can prep tons of, freezes beautifully. You can have that on a snack plate if that's all you have the energy for at night or for lunch. But then you can also use it as your protein that's already done and make easy meals for your family. So let's say you've got meatballs, tons of them in the freezer. You can easily make pasta. You can easily have like meatball subs, or you can make like pitas with hummus and maybe some beautiful herbs. You can turn it into so many different meals. And that's what's often the struggle, right? Especially in postpartum is, okay, I want to make a healthy meal. So I'm going to cook the protein, the veggie, the grain, and then it's too many pots and pans going on and lots of cleanup. So I'm a big fan of prepping proteins that you can either snap on with one hand or easily turn them into a fast meal depending on the groceries you have at home.
Yeah, I think that's so key because a lot of times it is like that. Like we need that multi-purpose kind of meal or something, and having multiple things that you can kind of grab from, but still give variety is really beneficial. Because I think a lot of times people are doing these big bulk preps, and then it's like, I don't want to eat another muffin, and then you're not
Exactly.
eating. And so, like, it is good to have that, like, versatile array of things that it does feel like how you said, even, like, a pasta dish versus, like, a meatball sub, like, still the meatballs,
Yeah.
but, like, you're having that variety in it so you don't feel like you're constantly eating the same thing, or maybe you're not in the mood for one thing specifically, or how you were saying that, like, a lot of the, like, sweets and things like that, or, like, having, like, all those, like, sweets on hand, it's like you're gonna get bored of that, or you're gonna be like, "Ugh, like, I don't really want this," or, like, you, like, lack that interest, and then as a result, you're just not eating, and I think, like, as much, like, food aversions and different things that you can have during pregnancy, those same sorta lingering things are happening postpartum, like, maybe it's not necessarily an aversion, but it is like you're like, "Ugh, I don't want another one of this," or to your point too, like, eating those soups and stews, like, it is hard, like, I remember with our first 2, like, yeah, like, people were, bringing over dishes and pans and stuff and pots of stuff and all these, soups and casseroles and whatnot, and it's like, "Okay, this is great," but, like, yeah, like, I need a bowl and a spoon, and I'm also holding this newborn, and so it's so important to have those one-handed snacks because most of the time that's how you are eating.
Exactly, that's most of the time, that's the majority of it, and we need to eat, and we need to eat a lot,
Yes.
so we need to put that into our freezer if we're doing prep.
Yeah. What can you say about, if you are setting up a meal train or you are kind of like suggesting people to make dishes or something for you, what are some things that you really highlight and like to include in those? And to that too, like some things that maybe we should kind of veer away from temporarily.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I'm thinking about this a lot right now, not just because my book is coming out, but because my best friend just had a baby 5 days ago. So I am cooking for her, and then others are cooking for her, and you sort of see, like, where it goes wrong and where it goes right, and because a meal train is such a beautiful gift, in my opinion, the best gift you can give a family that just had a baby. So, first, I think don't be afraid to be directive. Here's what I would really love because the thing about food, healing food, is yes, we want certain types of foods that help our body heal and give us the nutrients we need. But another part of healing is also that emotional, mental. So, like, what's a comfort food for you? What makes you feel a little more at peace, a little more comforted? Because this is a huge time of transition. So, never being afraid to say, like, this is my favorite chicken soup from when I was a kid. Please make this recipe. Like, let's ask her that. And I think a lot of people go to like lasagnas and these big pasta meals, and that can be quite taxing for our digestive system. So there's only so much lasagna I think that we want to eat. And to your point of getting sick of it. So being directive with people, I love this soup. I would love this stew. Maybe you could make me some breakfasts. Like for my girlfriend who just had a baby, I'm cooking her on a weekly basis these egg squares that I have in my cookbook that have meat in them. They have cooked veggies, so they're easier on the digestive system. I cut them into squares, and then she can put them on buttered toast. I sometimes will in the cookbook talk about wrapping them as burritos and freezing like 18 of them, and then you can put sauce or salsa. Like you said, change it up. What flavors are you feeling like? And of course, snacks when we are making meals, not just the giant casseroles, also the individually portioned snacks. So I like cooking for the family, but also the mom. So maybe I'll bring like a family size soup or something like that. And then I'll have like 4 or 5 individually sized ones for the freezer because we need something at 10 a.m. when we've already been up for 7 hours and we need a second meal. That sort of thing I think is really thoughtful.
Yeah. Sometimes people, like, understand, but, like, other times, like, people don't get that you are, like, waking up so often and so frequently, and so, like, morning isn't necessarily morning,
Right.
and, like, breakfast might not be happening at, like, typical breakfast times, and so, like, it is nice to have, like, those quick things, like, even if it is something that has to be refrigerated, it can be, warmed up quickly or, like, easily accessible so that you are still, like, making sure you're not grabbing for things that aren't necessarily going to be beneficial for you.
Exactly, because that's where we find ourselves, and I'll speak from my own experience, is opening the fridge and thinking, "There's no food here, right? Only ingredients," and I'm not in a place mentally where I feel I have the capacity to cook, so, at least for me, I would then go to my pantry. Okay, what do I have there? I have some cookies, I have some crackers, I have some, like, chips and salsa or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but when that is sort of, at least for me, was my constant day to day, that is going to drain and deplete me more. And then what's going to happen is my healing might be compromised, my energy is going to go down, my hormones aren't going to be supported, my digestion's not going to be supported, brain fog is going to get worse. And that's not what I want. So, really asking family and friends to show up with nourishing food and, if possible, doing some prep in advance truly pays off in every possible way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think how you were saying, like, like, bringing meals for the whole family, like, things like that. Like, we have 2 older kids right now, 6 and 3, and so, like, the snacks are crazy, like, in the pantry, and it ranges, and I had found myself, like, wanting to grab for the kids' snacks, which are fine, like, we try to, like, make good choices there too, but it's not gonna be super beneficial for me, it's just something that, maybe, like, they munch on or have on hand or is available for them, but we can, like, default and find ourselves, eating these things for our older children instead of wanting to, heat up something or cook something or trying to figure out, like, what in the world am I eating? And so, like, how much of prep work do you talk about in the book as far as that is concerned? And, like, how far are we kind of prepping in advance or, what's a good timeline of preparing meals?
Yeah, it's such a good question because how do we do this practically? What I find and what I usually caution people away from is leaving it until the last couple of weeks. And I know that that's intuitive, like, okay, I'm stopping work maybe 2 or 3 weeks early, so I'm going to do food prep then. Often it falls off. And because you're going to have a baby soon, you need to rest. Maybe your body doesn't have the capacity at that point. So I like recommending to do it like a month or two in advance, and you can chip away at it. It doesn't have to be this giant food prep over like 8-hour days or anything like that. But in the couple of months leading up to giving birth, if you're making, say, that favorite chicken soup, or you're making a batch of your favorite oatmeal chocolate chip cookies or frittata or whatever it is, make double. Because when we already have those ingredients out and we're going through the steps of the recipe, it really doesn't take that much extra time to double up. And so then we do one for this week for the family, one for the freezer, one for this week, one for the freezer. So you can do it slowly like that. And I really recommend in this book, I have a chapter called Prepped Proteins, to the point I was talking about earlier, where I think we can save ourselves a lot of time coming away from making these big meals that take more time that we maybe don't have in advance of baby. So in this chapter, I have recipes for all types of prepped proteins like the meatballs or the egg squares or different types of chicken, steak bites, salmon bites, all of these things that are so good for our body and take away the component that takes the most time, energy, and cleanup when baby's here. And then next to each of those recipes, I have about 5 recipe ideas for each one. So if you just do the protein and that's in the freezer and that only took you 20 minutes, right? That's not a 2-hour recipe or even a 45-minute recipe because we're just doing one thing. Then we freeze a bunch of that with variety. Then we can go to, okay, what are those 5, 6 recipe ideas that I can make with very simple groceries that maybe my friends and family have dropped off or can prepare for me in just 10 minutes. So I really like spending my time on that. The snackies, the prepped proteins, not worrying as much about these full meals that take up a lot of freezer space that we may or may not have.
Yeah, that's such a good point because yeah, like even if you're just doing one component of that meal and you're freezing that so it's taking out the time or, the guesswork or anything like that and you just have that on hand, it can be super beneficial. And then I love how you saying like, then here's like 5 different recipes that use that same component. And so it really helps break it down and simplify it, which I think is, a huge thing that you focus on. And it just helps because I think sometimes we do think like, oh, it has to be this like long elaborate thing or, if you're not somebody that cooks or, like you feel like not confident in the kitchen or things like that, like they are simple recipes to follow over like we don't have to be, these like grand chefs to be making sure that we nourish ourselves. So like what more can you kind of say to that to somebody that's like, "Oh, like I don't cook in general, like I'm more like takeout or I buy like pre-prepped things." not like, why do I have to like prep all my own food, but like, what can you kind of say to making it seem more simple and easy for somebody who isn't used to necessarily being in the kitchen or cooking a whole bunch, and then like how can that kind of then, bleed into like these first few years of motherhood?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. There's so many good points in what you just said because that's a really common experience and something people share with me often is I don't like cooking. I'm not a big cook. I'm not good at it. It's not something I do regularly and that's 100% okay. This is not the time to suddenly become a chef in the kitchen. It is absolutely the time to take the shortcuts. So if maybe talking about soups and stews and dinners feels overwhelming, then we're just going to do the prep proteins, right? We're just going to do those things that contribute the most to our nutritional status and our healing. Or the other recommendation I have is let's pick the prep tasks that are going to give us the biggest benefit and improvement over what's in the store. So it's true, you could buy awesome meatballs and things like that that are already in the store. But if we go to the snack aisle and we look at what are the granola bars and the cookies and the packaged products, those are not going to be great for our energy and our hormones and our digestion. So making maybe just snacks, maybe just making 3 or 4 types of snacks and putting those in the freezer, a couple of batches of each, so that when we do have those snacks, we can feel really good about there's oats and flax and chia, and they're sweetened with maybe applesauce and banana, maybe a little maple syrup. We're going to be contributing to our health in that way. And I think for most of us, doing a snack, muffins, energy balls, cookies, feels sometimes quite a bit more doable than some of the other things. So I think absolutely do shortcuts for the rest and just make some of those snacks, and you're still going to be really helping yourself during that time.
Yeah, and I think it's like once you kinda get in the habit of doing that, it just becomes something that maybe you put off on Saturdays or, like, Sunday mornings or whatever it might be, and you're just kind of, like, doing it once a week because and like you were saying too, like, it's like you're making a dinner, like, just make extra and then
Yeah.
freeze some of that, and I think sometimes it's, like, making it, more simplistic because you're already making that one meal or you're already making, you're not just making a single snack for, like, tomorrow.
Right.
You're making it for the whole week or however
Yeah.
long.
And you mentioned too, like going into the season of having little kids at home, that's one of the benefits that is so awesome. So, say you get really good at making a handful of really healthy snacks, they benefit you now. But then when your baby is ready for these and they're through their toddler years, you can feel really good about, like, I have these recipes. I don't need to buy them as many packaged foods. I know I'm nourishing them. Of course, all of us as moms want to nourish our kids. So, the habits that you and the recipes you learn to make now, not that you have to learn easy step by step, but it really continues to benefit, right, your family as they grow up.
Yeah, and most of the time when they get older, they want to be involved and help make stuff. Like my kids like have those step stools that right on the counters and they're like, "I want to help mix this or I want to help make that." And it's cool to involve them and then as they get older, you can get them involved and if like it's still like early years, like I baby wore all my babies. So they're watching me, cook and make
Absolutely.
food and they're around it and they smell it and it's interactive for them too. And like, you don't have to, like, get your kids, like, out of the kitchen. They
Exactly.
can be, like, right there with you and doing all this stuff and even, like, the cleanup and whatnot. Like I said, like, I baby wore with mine, and our son, like, he likes to get in the sink and wash dishes. And, like,
Amazing.
he's not great at it, obviously, because he's 3, but we let him think that he's doing something. And,
Totally.
he takes the dishes and puts them in the sink, and just getting them to be involved with it can really just make the whole experience that much better too.
100%. It's so good for them and it sets them up for healthy relationship with food and healthy eating because they see it happening. They want to be part of it. And you're right. Kids, they love helping in the kitchen.
Yeah. So what else can you kinda say, like, as far as preparing for postpartum with nutrition, can we really be, like, looking at or should be focusing on?
Yeah. I think keeping in the realm of what feels realistic for you. So, if you often I'll say, think about 4 categories. We have our healing, warming meals that are really good and helpful for dinners. So, that's going to support our digestive system after we give birth. If you can do some of those soups, stews, bone broth-based meals for even if for the first week or so. If you can't commit to doing that for a month or 40 days, that's okay. Can we even have one element of a warming meal once a day? Maybe it's not 3 meals a day, but maybe you have, for instance, I love like a savory bone broth porridge, or maybe for you it's a
Mhm.
soup or just a cup of bone broth once a day for maybe the first week, maybe 2 weeks. That will go a really long way into supporting your body to heal, help with your assimilation of nutrients, because we want to make the most of the nutrients we're getting in our food. And then from that point, remembering to eat, I think, is something that we don't talk a lot about. It can be really common to, we're tired and we have a lot of brain fog often in postpartum. So hours can go by. Like you said, morning doesn't really have a meaning. Meal times don't have meanings. Like those things kind of go by the wayside, and that's normal. So if you need to set a timer or something like that, like, oh, shoot, I haven't eaten in 3 hours. I really need to make sure I get something into my body, or assigning that to somebody else. So maybe you have a parent that's visiting, or your partner is home for a little while, making sure that they are sort of keeping track of that and maybe taking on the responsibility of feeding you. Please make sure you bring me a meal, and a hearty meal, especially if breastfeeding. Our appetite can go up like crazy. So, an actual meal every few hours, abundant snacks ready to go. Eating enough is one of the most important things that we can do. And the other thing I want to mention is, because in normal times we're taught to shy away from it, but in postpartum, we want to really embrace it, which is fat. So, no matter if you prep foods or family's cooking for you, you're buying some things at the store, see if you can add some great healthy fats to that. So, some great fats for postpartum are like ghee or coconut oil or butter, little extra olive oil. Some, if you've got maybe steak bites in the freezer because you prepped them, or meatballs, let's add a couple to your plate. Fats are one of the most important things for your mental health, for your healing, your digestive system, all of those.
Yeah, I think, like you said, like, it's something that people are like, "Oh, like, we're not supposed to have that." And it's like, "N no, like, you need it." And I think, making sure it's good sources of fat is a lot different than just, like, consuming fatty foods or things like that.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think, like, understanding the difference, and I think people are kind of, like, waking up from that, and we're not in this fat-free era, and, I think people are understanding too, like, like, maybe, like, smoothies and salads aren't always the best, and things like that. Like, obviously, like, if there's, like you were saying, like, comfort foods and things like that, if you absolutely, like, find comfort in something, then go for it. But if you're trying to, bounce back or lose weight, like, in those, like, even early years postpartum, like, it's not something that needs to be done, and I think when we're nourishing ourselves with good whole food, it just kind of, like, naturally happens the way it's supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's such a great reminder. Eating enough is not only okay, it's good. It's exactly what we need. So if you're hungry for extra meals and you're hungrier than you were during pregnancy and that feels surprising, it's totally normal and it's totally okay and it's a good thing.
Yeah. What kind of, like, drinks would you suggest?
I love drinks. So I'm a big fan in the early weeks. I'm not talking, you still need to carry on this habit a year later, but I love bone broth. It is so great for postpartum. It's got all the amino acids, collagen building, glycine, minerals that we need for healing. And what I hear often is, oh, but I can't drink bone broth on its own. Like, fine in a soup, but I cannot stand the taste. So I actually have in this next cookbook bone broth elixir, where I am teaching you with a few extra ingredients how to make it yummy so you can sip it like tea. So I love that. Salt, 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 and all the more salt is the number one most important thing there. And then I really like herbs. So I'm a big fan of herbal teas. So in postpartum, there are some really great herbs that you can integrate that are safe for breastfeeding, safe for healing, and that can help you not only recover because they're high in nutrients, but also support things like feeling calm, feeling a little less overwhelmed, maybe even supporting breastfeeding. So I love to integrate herbs as well as an herbal tea. It's a nice warm drink. Again, if you're trying to do even just one warm thing a day, a cup of herbal tea is great. It's also relaxing, even just the practice of having a tea or having someone bring you that, I think is lovely. Or making like an herbal latte, make it a little bit fancy. I mean, the only fancy thing is boiling water and then putting milk on top, nothing crazy. So I like mixing herbs. So, for instance, getting a combination of some alfalfa, which is really good for your mineral repletion, something like our nevels, which again is great for healing. Even those, just those two, mixing them up in a mason jar and then putting a
Mhm.
tablespoon, boiling some water, and having that as a daily practice.
Yeah, it's just making me hungry and, like, excited for, like, the postpartum period because it really is, like, a time to truly be I mean, pregnancy in general, but, like, postpartum, it's just, like, that warm, cozy, nourishing time to really just
Truly.
be, like, pouring into yourself,
Yeah.
literally, like, very good, whole, yummy things, and I think, like, it's cool that I'll be in the fall season of things,
Yeah, it's
but
the
it
best time.
yeah. But I mean, even if
Cozy.
it's like summer,
Yep.
drink that warm drink and it's still
Yeah.
gonna, be nourishing and replenishing no matter
Absolutely.
what season you're having babies in.
Yeah, great point. Absolutely.
Cool. So, what would be kind of like one final piece of advice or words of wisdom that you would want to give to somebody who is preparing for this postpartum period?
Yeah, I think my final word of advice is you're not doing it wrong. And if everything we've talked about doesn't feel practical to you, please know that there is value in every single thing that you eat. So even if that's whatever's in your pantry, or even if that's takeout sometimes, there are still really needed calories and micro and macronutrients in that food. And that's the most important thing, is that you eat whatever is practical for you during that time. That's number one. Number two is, how can we make it more nourishing, right? Can we add a little bit of butter or ghee to this? And you're doing an awesome job.
Awesome. Well, where can we find you, get in contact with you? I know we were talking about Instagram and your cookbook. Tell us all the details about what's going on.
For sure. So the best way to find me is probably Instagram. I'm over there as at the Food Doula. And then my new book that's coming out mid-January is called The Nourished Mother. So look out for that. I'll have all the links on Instagram, and feel free to DM me, send me a message anytime. I'm always happy to chat about this stuff.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, mamas, so much for listening. Remember, you are a rock star. I believe in you. Let's doula this. Let's crank it up a notch and let's kick it into high gear together. Hit that subscribe button, share this episode with a friend, message me, email me, call me, beat me. You know how to reach me. We're doing this, mamas. I am so excited to catch you here next week. This is your one-stop go-to place for helping you find the resources you need to make the best choices for you and your family during pregnancy, birth, and most importantly, postpartum. See you later, mamas.